Today is Thursday, March 10th. We're talking about a rare fight within NATO about how to help Ukraine and how Vice President Harris found herself suddenly in the middle of it. Also, a digital dollar could be on the way. We'll explain a new plan from the White House for cryptocurrencies. Plus, rapper Travis Scott's new mission to make concerts safer, a piece of history found on the ocean floor, and the honor that brought golf legend Tiger Woods to tears. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. Well, unfortunately, we have some sad developments to share with you out of Ukraine. This week, Russian airstrikes hit 3 Ukrainian hospitals. 2 of them happened about 3 hours west of the capital. The third was at a maternity and children's hospital in the southern port city of Mariupol, trapping people inside, including children. At least 17 people there were hurt in that strike alone. And Mariupol has been the scene of some of the most intense fighting this week. Escape routes out of the city are blocked, and the people left behind have been going without food, water, and power for several days. Meanwhile, Russian forces are stepping up their attacks in the second most populous Ukrainian city, Kharkiv, and they're inching closer to the capital of Kyiv. Also this week, Russia accused the U.S. of helping Ukraine with biological weapons research. The White House calls that preposterous, and Biden administration officials say Russians may be making those accusations as a way to justify its own biological or chemical attacks in the future. Through it all, the U.S. Secretary of State says he's still convinced Russian President Putin will fail in Ukraine, given Ukraine's strong resistance and the unity of the West. Russian and Ukrainian foreign ministers are scheduled to meet today, and these will be the highest-level talks since the invasion began. Vice President Harris is waking up in Poland this morning. Originally, she made the trip to thank the Polish people for taking in more than 1 million Ukrainian refugees so far. And she was supposed to highlight America's commitment to addressing Ukraine's military and humanitarian needs. But now she's facing a little more tension because Americans and Poles are in the middle of a disagreement over fighter jets. Essentially, the Polish government wants to send their Russian-made jets to Ukraine to help, since Ukrainian pilots already know how to fly them. But here's the sticking point. Poland wants to send them to an American military base first, so it would really be the U.S. sending the jets directly into Ukraine. Well, the Pentagon quickly said that's not going to happen. The U.S. military says it would create a high risk of sparking a more direct conflict with Russia, and it's ultimately up to the Polish leaders if they want to send over the jets on their own. But Poland doesn't want to act without the help of allies. It's also not clear how much the extra jets would actually help. American officials are arguing that the jets would not make much of a difference since the Russians already have the Ukrainian Air Force so outnumbered. So we'll see if and how the vice president will try to patch things up during this trip. It is worth noting the U.S. has already supplied Ukraine with weapons and hit Russia with heavy financial sanctions. In fact, Russia now says the U.S. is waging a, quote, economic war. To be continued. Well, back in the U.S., negotiators in Congress say they finally reached a bipartisan deal to fund the government through the rest of the fiscal year. It's worth $1.5 trillion, and it just passed the House last night. It includes nearly $14 billion in response to the war in Ukraine. That's more than double the amount President Biden requested. A lot of that will go to the troops who are helping defend NATO in Eastern Europe. More will go to replenish equipment the U.S. already sent, and there will be money to support Ukraine's energy grid, humanitarian aid, and more. On top of that, this deal could increase spending here at home by nearly 7%. It could give things like education, transportation, and science programs a big boost. In fact, that would be the largest rise of non-defense spending in 4 years, and it would put more money into the Defense Department, too. The bill still has to pass in the Senate, but senators are planning to vote on it before the week is out. They actually have to, because if a spending bill is not passed by the end of the day on Friday, the current government funding runs out and certain agencies would have to shut down, at least temporarily. But that's not expected to happen, since both Republicans and Democrats have praised this new agreement. For the first time, the White House is formally weighing in on the risks and benefits of cryptocurrencies. President Biden signed an executive order that directs several agencies to research digital money. For example, the Federal Reserve will explore whether it should jump in and create its own cryptocurrency, essentially a digital version of the dollar. The Commerce Department is supposed to come up with a strategy to help the U.S. innovate new technologies so America can have a competitive edge on the world stage. The Treasury Department will study how cryptocurrency impacts financial stability and national security, and then it's supposed to come up with recommendations to help people avoid fraud or a volatile market. The crypto industry and advocates seem to welcome this order, while critics argue it's delaying needed government regulation. Already, surveys show about 16% of American adults have invested in cryptocurrencies. More news is coming up, but first, let's take a quick break to thank our sponsor. As part of my morning routine every day, I take 2 capsules of Seed's Daily Symbiotic. I take it on an empty stomach, as they recommend, and I just love how they make me feel. So this is a pre- and probiotic 2-in-1 capsule. There are 24 clinically and scientifically studied strains, the first of its kind. It's for supporting gut health, skin health, it promotes heart health, and more. As someone who cares about my whole body health, I was looking for the best probiotic on the market a while back. I did quite a bit of research, and I actually found Seed before I even partnered with them. And now I'm excited Seed is a sponsor of the show because after taking the Daily Symbiotic for a while, I've noticed the benefits of this product on my health. I am truly impressed. In fact, I even got my husband to start taking these as well. And I love that you can now get a discount. You can get 15% off your first month's supply of Seed's Daily Symbiotic by visiting seed.com/newsworthy or by using the code newsworthy at checkout. Again, you can get 15% off your first month's supply of Seed's Daily Symbiotic by going to seed.com/newsworthy or use the code newsworthy at checkout. In a discovery more than a century in the making, one of the most famous shipwrecks in history was found off the coast of Antarctica. 107 years ago, explorer Ernest Shackleton's ship was crushed by ice and sank to the bottom of the Weddell Sea, forcing the crew to jump ship and drift on ice for months before being rescued. Well, just yesterday, organizers of an expedition announced they found the historic ship, and it's in shockingly good condition. So good, the name of the ship, the Endurance, can still be seen clearly across the stern. A British historian said that's probably because of the extremely cold water, since wood-eating microorganisms cannot survive in those temperatures. The crew used underwater drones to track down the ship just 4 miles away from its last known place, which the captain wrote down when it sank. Now, researchers say the ship will be studied and filmed, but not moved because it's protected as a historic site. Rapper Travis Scott is pledging $5 million to make events safer and to create opportunities for at-risk youth in the wake of the Astroworld tragedy. He's kept a pretty low profile since a crowd surge during his performance at the music festival killed 10 people last November. But this week, Scott announced the charity initiative called Project Heal. The cash is going to community-based programs like free mental health programs for vulnerable kids, a scholarship program, and Scott's creative design program, which brings fashion education to high school students. Plus, he says one of the project's biggest goals is to make events safer. He plans to do that by getting input from the government, public safety, healthcare, and event management to find ways to make large events as safe as they can be. Along with that announcement, Travis said he will always honor the victims of the Astroworld tragedy. But not everyone thinks this new move is sincere. The grandparents of the youngest Astroworld victim, who was just 9, blasted Scott, calling it a PR stunt. More than 70 heavy hitters in Hollywood wrote an open letter slamming controversial changes to the Oscars. Think Oscar-winning director James Cameron and composer John Williams, just to name a few. It's about what the Academy announced last month, that awards for 8 categories would be handed out before the Oscars are televised, and then edited versions of those moments will be weaved into the broadcast. Those categories include film editing, makeup and hairstyling, original score, production design, and others. Well, this open letter argues pre-recording some of the Oscar awards like that would relegate those award winners to, quote, the status of second-class citizens. But the Academy's president and chief exec defended the move last week in an interview with Deadline, saying all honorees will be treated with respect. The Oscars are less than 3 weeks away now, set to air on March 27th. The start of baseball is pushed back once again. The MLB canceled 93 more games last night because the players and owners still cannot strike a deal. The league's commissioner said the games had to go because of the logistical realities of the calendar. He also said the MLB's offer is fair, and he's sad about the impact this will have, especially on the fans. The MLB Players Association fired back at the cancellations, calling them completely unnecessary. The union also said the players cannot wait to get back out on the field for the best fans in the world. Apparently, the biggest hurdle in these negotiations is that the league wants an international draft, which would be a way to bring in young talent from all around the world, but the Players Union is against it. Now, opening day will not happen until at least April 14th. The greatest golfer of his generation took his place with the best of all time last night. Tiger Woods was inducted into the Golf Hall of Fame. And in a sweet moment, he was introduced by his 14-year-old daughter. And her speech really stole the show. Even Woods was brought to tears. When he took the stage, Woods did not talk about his record 82 victories on the PGA Tour or his 15 majors wins or the 8 surgeries he had to have all along the way. Instead, he talked about the sacrifices his parents made, like taking out a second mortgage for him to play the sport he loved. He also recounted a time he was not allowed inside a clubhouse because of the color of his skin, but he vowed to keep playing anyway. Even more than his wins, Woods was celebrated for his massive influence on the game and generations of players. While Woods was the headliner, 4 other people were inducted into the Hall of Fame as well last night, including 3-time U.S. Women's Open champion Susie Maxwell-Burning. All right, that's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Think to Know Thursday. But first, a quick word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. A lot of us will drop anything to go help someone we care about, right? We'll go out of our way to treat other people well. But how often do we give ourselves that same treatment? So this month, BetterHelp Online Therapy wants to remind you that you matter just as much as everyone else does. And therapy is a great way to make sure you show up for yourself. I know from experience, it's a worthwhile investment. Even when I didn't think things were that bad, I realized that therapy just helps make any situation that much easier to deal with. And really, it made me a better person. BetterHelp is online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can be matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. Give it a try and see why over 2 million people have used BetterHelp Online Therapy. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and the Newsworthy listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/newsworthy. That's BETTERHELP, betterhelp.com/newsworthy. Now back to Thing to Know Thursday. And today's Thing to Know is the potential impact of the Russia-Ukraine conflict on the world's food supply. Together, Ukraine and Russia account for nearly a third of the world's wheat and barley exports, plus a slew of other staples. For example, Ukraine is also a major supplier of corn and sunflower oil, which is used in food processing. And European livestock farmers rely on that corn for animal feed. But Ukrainian farmers have been forced to either flee or fight, meaning they've had to neglect their fields. So if the supply is cut off, it could drive up food prices that are already at record levels. So far, there hasn't been a big disruption to the wheat supplies, but prices have surged 55% since a week before the invasion over concerns about what could happen next. And if the war drags on, the International Grains Council says regions that count on affordable wheat exports from Ukraine, like Europe, Africa, and Asia, could face shortages this summer. All right, thank you so much for listening today. We are so grateful you turned to us to help keep you informed. We'll be back with much more news to know tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.